I love the church. I love the priests, the nuns, the seminarians, my fellow Catholics in the pews. I love the church's history, her saints, her accomplishments, the work the church has done in the world, and most of all, I love our Lord and Our Lady. I wouldn't trade any of it in for anything, and I certainly don't think we need a new church, like that nauseating modernist hymn that you hear at parishes these days. To be brutally honest about it, I don't think we need a new Advent, a new Pentecost, or, frankly, even a new evangelization. In a 2,000-year-old church, we don't need new things. We need things to be restored to their glory. I know I'm not alone in feeling this way either. The church has problems, but I assure you those problems are not the product of traditional ideas, dogmas, doctrines, disciplines, or liturgy. Part of our problem is the embrace of the new, the novel, and the revolutionary spirit that fuels constant innovation. The latest iteration of this came from the recent bizarre inclusion in synodal documents at the Synod on the Undermining of the Youth, when a call for greater synodality was inserted into synod documents, despite that topic not actually having been brought up at all by the kiddos at the synod. It's almost like the synod fathers had the idea for it pre-planned. Thankfully, some of the leaders in the church have pointed out that synodality is actually a terrible idea and has itself little to do with Catholicism and instead reeks of a new church. LifeSite News has the story. Cardinal Burke. Synodality suggests some kind of new church where Pope's authority is destroyed. And he said this in Limerick, Ireland. Cardinal Raymond Burke has come out criticizing the concept of synodality that was barely discussed during the recent concluded Youth Synod, but nevertheless found its way into the final document, surprising many of the Synod Fathers. It's become like a slogan meant to suggest some kind of new church which is democratic and in which the authority of the Roman pontiff is relativized and diminished, if not destroyed, said Cardinal Burke in an exclusive interview with LifeSite News. And he is exactly right about that. This is typical of a lot of the things in the church today. The enthusiasts for synodality keep talking about it, but I can't find any definition of what it is, he says. During Lumen Fide's Catholic Vote Conference in Ireland this past weekend, the Cardinal answered questions from LifeSite News on topics ranging from spiritual warfare, the attack on marriage, and the controversial notion of synodality. When pressed on why he believed the term synodality was found throughout the final document from the Youth Synod, when the concept itself was never addressed, Burke replied, "It's typical of the Synod of Bishops in these last times that it's used as a kind of political tool to suddenly promote ideas that weren't even discussed in the Synod itself. And that's not honest." Thank you, Cardinal Burke, for speaking the truth. When asked if the principle of synodality was applied to the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops conference in Baltimore, Maryland last month, where the Vatican asked the bishops to delay voting on 2 measures to address the sexual abuse crisis, the Cardinal responded, "It's difficult to say whether it was applied or not because there's no definition of the term." I love this weaponized ambiguity that comes to rule the church today. Addressing why a synod would be called historically, Cardinal Burke explained that synods of bishops were created to reaffirm the teachings of the church, never to dictate new doctrine. There has existed in the Latin Church the notion of a synod. A synod was held in either a diocese or a province, or even on a national level, to find ways to teach the Catholic faith more effectively and to promote the proper discipline in the church. That's basically what a synod of bishops is. That's its definition. It's a meeting of the bishops to assist the Pope to see how to teach the faith more effectively, and how to promote a more faithful Christian life in accordance with the discipline of the church. But now, seemingly, the term synodality is being used to suggest that conferences of bishops would have doctrinal authority, he said. It's all quite confused and I would say very dangerous. People not understanding the notion of a synod correctly would think, for instance, that the Catholic Church has now become some kind of democratic body with some kind of new constitution, he added. Burke addressed this concept of ecclesial deconstruction, part of what some in the hierarchy have labeled the new paradigm, more of that progressive language, by reaffirming the Petrine foundation of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is an organic reality of grace, which comes to us from our Lord himself. He constituted the Church, once and for all, the same. One faith with the sacraments, one discipline, one governance. These things have to, now, be made very clear, he said. Bishop Athanasius Schneider has also raised concerns about the concept of synodality, saying last month that it was being used at the Youth Synod by some high-ranking clergy to promote their own agenda. Pushing through the scheme of synodality in the final document in disregard for authentic synodal documents methods, since this topic was not sufficiently debated in the Synod Hall and there was not enough time to read the final text, which was given to the bishops only in Italian, is a demonstration of an exasperated clericalism. Nice! Such synodal clericalism intends to transform the life of the church into a worldly and Protestant parliament style with continuous discussions and voting processes on matters that cannot be put to a vote, he said. One of the things I love is when we use their own language against them, and weaponizing clericalism to fight against the modernists is a beautiful thing in my eyes. I almost wonder if the great apostasy hasn't quite happened yet, but will be kicked off by the formalization of the synodal church. And I say that because the concept of gradualism is essential here. Gradualism is the idea that we can arrive at massive changes in practice or even doctrine by baby steps, by gradual small changes. It's an essentially progressive concept, similar to the logic of how the United States has gone from having no state health care of any kind to being on the verge of a nationalized healthcare system due to the gradual implementation, piecemeal, of various healthcare programs, even if virtually all of those healthcare programs have been failures of various magnitudes. Gradualism is similar. This talk of ordaining women took off after the Second Vatican Council, but was rejected, thankfully, so the American bishops pushed for the use of altar girls to assist with the liturgy, despite the position of altar boy having been directly implemented as a means of recruiting vocations. And they, as well as permitting women to run virtually all of the major parish offices, all of which had been roles reserved for the priest and for young men who were discerning the priesthood. And now we have open talk of ordaining women as deaconesses, which will have no resemblance to the biblical role by the same name. We see the same thing today with the so-called synodal church. At the council, the conciliar fathers called for greater power for bishops, who then started meeting in national conferences. The otherwise worthless and useless United States Conference of Catholic Bishops is one of the fruits of Vatican II. I'd say it could get worse, but the spirit of synodalism is being implemented in the U.S. now by one stunning and brave bishop who has decided to recognize how stunning and brave feminism is by placing a woman in charge of a parish for the first time in church history, as far as anyone can tell. That story comes from a Spanish-language blog, Info Vaticana. I'll just summarize it because the translation provided by Google is very clumsy, and of course I'll be interjecting all over the place here. The final document of the Synod on the undermining of the youth stated that it was a duty of justice, why not social justice, to give women the leadership of the church. The Synod continues to provide all sorts of fruit, and in this case it appears to be the un-Catholic and un-Christian fruit of feminism. Bishop Frank Caggiano of Bridgeport has made history by putting a woman in charge of a parish. Apparently, Caggiano, synodal father, came home from Rome very convinced to apply the new guidelines presented by those stunning and brave kiddos on how to govern the church. Lord have mercy on us. It has become clear to me that many lay people are looking for new ways to serve their parishes, and in collaboration with the clergy to create vibrant and flourished communities, Bishop Caggiano wrote to the faithful of St. Anthony of Padua Church in Fairfield to announce the appointment of Dr. Eleanor W. Sowers as coordinator of parish life. No word yet on how many Catholics have left that parish in order to find an actual Catholic church to attend. And I say that because, as Michael Hitchborn writes for Church Militant, Dr. Sowers has gone on the record to say that feminist sensibilities can be integrated into the Catholic tradition, which fills my heart with joy, and I know it does the same for you too. This move follows on the footsteps of the passing of the last pastor of the church, Father John Barron, which was made after much prayer and discernment by the bishop. This itself follows in the model of the USCCB having priestless parishes in the future, as they embrace the total failure of conciliarism and its effects on vocations in the United States and in the Latin Rite broadly. We can expect more of this, though, because the spirit of revolution lives firmly in the church now. The Catholic Church has an illness, and that illness is modernism, with its constant spirit of revolution and novelty. This is just the latest episode in the embracing of the world by the forces that run the church now. Pray for this bishop, pray for Dr. Sowers, and pray for the parishioners at that parish. As modernism continues to progress in the church, and as the vocations crisis continues, we'll see more of this too. Just watch. If you like videos like this, like and share this video and subscribe, and click that notification bell below. You can support my work if you want to through Patreon and Subscribestar. Both are linked in the description below, along with links to my Twitter, the Sources blog, and the Return to Tradition Facebook page. Thanks for listening. I'm Anthony Stein. Viva Cristo Rey.